is the all-new Brackett Show. Brackett Show. And now, here's Chris Brackett.
What's up, everybody? The Brackett Show. Dude, it's November. I'm fired up. I got a tag filled.
Man.
Kirk's got a tag filled. 2 down. I don't even know what happened this week. I kind of blacked out. I feel like I've been sweating since April. I mean, we're sent to Illinois. It is November, and it's like 75 degrees outside. I feel like every day since April, and I was this close to having a nervous breakdown. But when that big giant deer made it to 5 yards, and I stuck him with an arrow and saw those orange fletchings sticking out, and he just crashed, and all my worries instantly went away, except for the fact that I needed to call a couple friends, a couple young guys, to help me drag that big hoss out of the woods. He was just down on a little bitty hill, and 235 pounds. But I cannot wait to tell everybody about everything that has transpired in only 7 days. So we filmed these on Tuesdays, and that would have been around what? That would have been around Halloween-ish, and then we were looking forward to November 1. That was Friday, would have dropped. And literally since, we've been sitting out all of October, we've been talking about it. Proof is in the pudding. Sometimes I second-guess myself. I do second-guess myself. I talk a lot. I'm all over the place. But even on years that are horribly hot, the deer aren't feeding. The deer don't have to feed. The deer don't have to move. They don't have to go anywhere. And they just kind of sit around. Even then, I stay true to my word. I stay true to what I call my buck Bible, that I should be writing it more, but it's up in here. And, stay out of the woods in October mornings. Hunt the evenings, hunt around, pay attention to what's happening, started passing up bucks, and you could feel the energy and the ball kind of rolling, getting ready for that November 1. And that November 1, because I had stayed out of my personal property, I rolled in there. I saw 37 deer and 8 bucks. I passed up almost every 4-year-old and under buck on my property on the morning of November 1.
Man, yeah, I know you've been waiting, and we've talked about it so much. Where are the deer at?
Mm-hmm.
Are they coming? What's happened to them? And they showed up. And
you're learning. So to recap, the October stuff is, to me, kind of mathematics, right? You set a plan, you're hoping that one of the big bucks will play a card on your farm. You've probably taken a summer inventory, and then all of a sudden, you're waiting for one to go I like clover, and I'm coming out in food plot 6, and you're hoping they show you that card. Next thing you know, it's October 1, October 10th, October 20th. We had the full moon there. We had a little bit of a cold snap, and then it stayed hot. And you really find that you're wasting your life feeling like you're waiting for that one day, and you're trying to really only experience about 10 super good days in deer season. That's what it comes down to anymore, especially for weekend guys. And then, here they wish their life away. We all wish our lives away. For these perfect days of deer hunting. And that November 1 was absolutely fire, crispy morning. That up the ravine from me, I just hear a giant roar, and this buck's chasing 3 does, and I'm like, here it goes. It was right after daylight, and then for the rest of the day, I just saw a deer. I want to tell you a little bit about, how it's really gone since then.
Yeah, man, we got to hear the stories.
But before then,
okay.
But before then, I'm going to do a morning wake-up call.
We got to get
fired
up. Yeah.
So Hunting Day Coffee, my friend Steve and April, they have Hunting Day coffee made for hunters by hunters. And I just always love what they have wrote on the back of these, or written. My mom would have corrected me. Praise the Lord. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Psalms 106:1.
And if someone wants to call, what number do they call again?
Oh, they call 309-761-5263. That calls in here. This is our first caller for the morning wake-up call from a gentleman that called in and left us some type of voice message, and then now we play it on the show. This is
man.
for you.
Let's go.
Wakey, wakey, wakey.
Wake up.
Chris and Chris, what's up, boys? I freaking love the show. It's great.
Love
It's
it.
been impacting my hunting life in a great way. The zombie walk is real. It is real. Chris, you nailed it. And I got one thing. God bless our troops. God bless America. And gentlemen, start your engine. Woo! It's sweet November, baby. Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Oh, yeah, man.
That was just somebody calling in?
That was just somebody calling in.
Oh, my God.
We had to make it part of the show, though, man.
Sweet November
Let's
is
do it, man.
here. See, that's all you got to do. You just got to call in number 309-761-5263. Leave us a message like that. It's just simple. Tell us if we're doing good. Tell us if we're doing bad. We want to talk to you. We want to talk to everybody out there. This is the Brackett Show.
Yeah. All right, man.
Big bucks, grunting, leaves rattling. Like this is the time of the year that I just live for, man. And it all started on that cool, crisp November morning that I had to talk myself into hunting. Here I've been talking myself up, but I too get down a little bit. A normal October has its ups and downs, like I talk about, and has these little pinpoint little sections where these big boys will hit these scrapes and they'll show you and they'll do the dance. This year didn't happen. I haven't had any shooters except for one big dog. I had one just show up. And he was a deer I knew. He had these, I got one trail cam picture of him, and boy, Chris, you can see in this picture how big and massive he is. And he's got little white feet. I mean, big white feet, but little white patches on his feet, and I called them boots. And this deer's about 6.5 or 7.5 years old. I know he's going to be 200 and something pounds, and he's kind of in the back of my mind as a shooter deer, but I don't know if he's going to be like the one. So I couldn't really key in on him. Does that make sense? Like I couldn't key in on him because I was so focused on the one buck that I named, or Jody named Long Duck Dong.
Yeah, and you've been,
And
keeping
I've been
an eye on
after
him for a long time now.
He has outsmarted me. And so I kind of go into the end of October there. I wanted to kill a Halloween buck. So on Halloween, right before Sweet November, getting ready for that morning hunt, trying to psych myself up, still a little warm, still haven't had to break out any warm, kind of warm clothes, right? And I go and I hunt the backside of this food plot in the same corner. And and the reason I'm saying this over and over, if you've been paying attention to all the shows, I'm hunting this same location as long as that wind is blowing out of the west. We've talked about this before. I am, as Phil Robertson would say, riding the hole. And that just means you have a perfect setup. It's bulletproof. And it is like just one of those places that you know it's going to happen. You know you're going to see a lot of deer. And it's an inside corner. So picture this. I've got this old tillable field that I put in a little clover plot in. And I think we'll play a video right here as I'm describing this. We've got this green food plot full of clover rush. It's a clover rush plot from White Gold. And then there's this clover rush plot, and then it's surrounded by switchgrass and miscanthus. And these deer will come out in this clover plot, but the really smart older deer will go on the downwind side in the timber, walking through the timber. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to wind whatever does have been in that clover plot, and they're using that inside corner. So there's pasture here with a fence, and then there's this open timber, and then there's this drop off, east side, west wind in my face, east side, I've got a stand, and I'm hunting this little corridor. And my friend Royce wanted me to figure out how I could write or show the viewers how most people would hunt this green food plot. but they wouldn't think of hunting in the woods, hunting this corridor that if a deer wants to feel, very safe, he walks and smells that field in that inside corner. He's just going to be on the inside. And that is exactly what happened with this big 4-year-old animal, a big 9-pointer. He comes from down the pasture, or he comes from down the woods and walks almost right underneath me, and he stops and looks out into the clover while eating leaves and licking his lips and, making his nose kind of wet so he can smell real good. And you see all of this transpire right in front of you as this deer walks down, goes underneath my stand. The wind's blowing from the deer to me, the food plot to me, and he's in the woods looking out. You're going to see a common pattern over this last couple days of hunting, end of October into November. Where you think they would be, they're on this downwind side, kind of still being sneaky. They're not about the food, and they're just paying attention to the food source. And as he walks down there and turns, I think to myself, this is a dream come true. This is a really big deer. It's a big 9-pointer, 138, 141 inches, and he just walks by. This video is just perfect of him walking by. It's textbook bow hunting. And when those moments happen, you say to yourself, I fooled him. This is a moment that I've lived for, and you cherish every one of them. And it doesn't mean that I have to pull the trigger to kill this deer. I outsmarted him. I enjoyed that moment. I filmed it so we could share it on the show. And the deer just walks off and goes off. And at that point it gets dark. Big boy, the donger doesn't show up. I sneak out of there, and I have to go home and kind of figure out what happened. And I know that the does are stacking up in that area. And what I really wanted to do was go in there and hunt that first November morning. But I had to talk myself into it, I mean,
and I know, I had texted you, I think that morning too, it was like, are
you going?
Yeah. And then you text back like, my fingers are falling off.
Yeah. Was so cold that morning. But I was like, oh no, that was that night. I didn't wear enough clothes Halloween night.
Okay,
that's what it was.
Was that what it was on Halloween?
Yeah, so I was still sitting there, and I had dressed in like nothing, like a little bitty.
It did get cold though.
It was like after dark, you felt like that crispiness.
Yeah,
and it was pretty windy, I think, that night, and that wind was whipping, and I just got really cold, and so. It was like, do I even have my winter clothes out for November? I got to find my safety harness, and I got to get, this other safety harness to go with the bigger clothes. And what am I going to do? So I worked myself into I have to be out there. I owe it to the fans. I owe it to myself. Don't be the old man, and just keep hunting afternoons. Get out there. And the cool part was it was before the time change. And so I got up into the stand in the dark, first morning of the year, all the hard work of sitting out, and the sun breaks. I'm sitting there, it's beautiful, and I do hear this giant roar down below my lake in this big open timber. I hear, and if those of you who haven't heard of it, it's an extended grunt that lasts for, 3 or 4 seconds, and it's just they're so excited. This buck is so excited that he's taken his grunt and pushed more, and this is what I wake up to echoing through the woods. And here's 4 or 5 does out in front of this buck. I look with my binoculars, and here is my superstar 3-year-old with the flyers and the trash, and he's running through the woods. And I'm like, okay. Welcome to November. This is how it's supposed to go down.
Waiting. Yeah.
I've been waiting. And then at that point, they, run around. They go out into the switchgrass. I can see all this chasing. This is the first chasing I've seen. And so here's a 3.5-year-old chasing 4 or 5 does and fawns and messing around, but you can tell they're not really serious, not turned up the dial on the ruddiness, right? And they're just starting. They go out through the switchgrass and they go into the food plot, and the does walk underneath me. And at that point, I pull out my phone and I film the big 3-year-old turn and walk into the switchgrass and disappear. And I'm like, well, this is a pretty good morning. And this is in the first hour. I'm sitting there a little bit longer, and all of a sudden the does kind of meander back in, and they're going in and out. And this is where I want to say match the hatch. I've got these greenbriers and these multiflora rows. And if you don't know what greenbriers are, multiflora rows, they're the stickery, green, look like cat hooks, cat nails, and they kind of. They always have some type of green content that these deer can stand up and eat the like Russian olive and autumn olive green leaves, and then browse on the little fresh tips of this greenbriers. And I noticed this pattern where the deer didn't want to be in the open timber. They wanted to be in something that when the little bucks were chasing the does around, they would kind of fool them, and they would play anything that kind of looked like a maze. So I started noticing all this behavior with these does, and they've been bedded there all week. And I kind of noticed a little, kind of a pattern here. And so as about 9 o'clock, which is about my favorite time come November, about 9 o'clock, these does start moving. All of a sudden I look up, I see another buck. He goes into that briar thicket, starts chasing around. Another buck pops out. And then we've got this train where the does start coming out of the thicket down through the open timber, and they're on a mission to get away from these bucks. Here comes the line of those two bucks. They walk off. Then it seemed like for the next five, every time like a 5-minute, 10-minute session hit, there was another group of 2 or 3 does and fawns moving in and out of this thicket, out to the plot, switch grass, and they seemed to just be restless, being happy that it was cold. The high pressure on the barometer was 30.2 and rising, and this started just happening, and them trading from cover to cover. Mind you, what we talked about on one of the last episodes was none of this was getting captured on trail camera. None of
you got to be the trail camera.
Yeah, so at that point, that's one of those things where you're like, you got to be the trail camera, because it's not like they're going, from here to there.
I think there's something we need to clarify too, because we posted something short where talking about like trail cameras and like how just looking at that is ruining hunting. It's not that there's anything wrong with trail cameras. It's just like that's not everything. You won't be able to see
not everything
that you might be able to see if you're out there.
Yeah. So the comment, if you guys have seen it, is trail cameras are ruining hunting. No, the human that is intercepting the information from the trail cameras and only relying on the technology while they're being lazy at home and not being a woodsman and not being out there, which is what I was trying to do. I was trying to be the guy that didn't go hunt that morning that I've been talking about. So I had to get off my lazy butt and go push through and go get in that stand. And that's what I'm saying. I would have never seen any of this movement, even up till 9 o'clock. And at this point, I had seen like 20 deer. And if I relied on just the trail cameras, I would have never seen any of this, right? And at the same time, I needed to be there to witness what was happening and what was ramping up on the rut. And as I watched these does transfer in and out of this briars, and they would pick around, and the big does would kind of fight some of the other big does over acorns and just territory, I was watching all this take place, and out of nowhere from my neighbors, here comes another 10 deer, does and fawns, and then behind them is this other big deer. And then this other big deer showed up. Now, that means that I had seen probably 5 or 6 bucks, 4-year-old, 3-year-old, and a couple other 2 to 3-year-old animals, and it seemed like they were trying to like put together the puzzle. Like the rut wasn't on. They weren't in breeding phase. They weren't in fighting phase. There wasn't a lot of grunting. There was more grunting from the younger animals, just more like a bark, bark. And then you'd hear the fawns call for their moms because they get split up and they're like, meow, meow. And they have a lot of just social calls, but no super, super fired up rut. And none of those deer were shooters. And it just felt like the later the day got, between 9:30 and 10:30, there were more deer on their feet. As I'm looking at my phone, the phone says on my little app, it says that the barometer was 30.3. I think anytime that barometer is 30.2 and higher, the probability of those deer moving, those are the days you don't get out of the tree, you stay alert, you stay a little bit longer, you push yourself a little harder to be out there, because that barometer is such a big determinant on if these deer move or not. And that was sweet November morning. Was like there was 5-6 bucks. They were all doing their thing. I probably in that completed morning was in the 30 number for deer counted in just this corner of this woods, which was nothing compared to my cameras. My cameras were dead. It didn't seem like there was a deer on my farm. And then I go hunt and I find the right pocket.
And they're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
Doing deer stuff, right? So I'm fired up with that. And I know that I need to go back, but it was literally from like 11 o'clock till that evening, the temperature rose to 65, 70 degrees. And I felt like I shouldn't go back in there, because that was the day, if you remember, that the wind went from this northwest, all of a sudden it switched back and there was like zero wind, and you know that your scent didn't really get up or out anywhere. It was kind of lingering with those thermals. You know, we talked about the thermals and stuff. Your scent just kind of hung heavy in the air. You can picture, you know, around Halloween having a weenie roast or a campfire or a roast of marshmallows. Those, you know, those heavy nights when you can see that smoke go for just everywhere through the neighborhood, and you're like, oh, somebody's burning leaves.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And that's what I want you to picture while I'm telling this story about these deer. Is I wanted to go back in that stand. It was actually a day at 30.3 that I didn't want to get out of the stand and sit all day. And I think that's the determining factor is, one, will that wind stay consistent so you can stay in there all day? And if you still start seeing deer movement, that's the day you don't leave the stand. So many people right now are considering, do I hunt all day long, all day, every day, and burn themselves out? Well, as we get further into November, you know, you can hunt all day. But my determining factor is I don't set out to say, like, I'm going to hunt Friday all day long. You have to be truly committed to do that. I'm not saying not to do that. But what I am saying is I think more organically, be prepared with snacks in your pocket or a water bottle or a flask or, you know, some type of bladder system in your backpack, whatever. Be at this time in November right now, you need to be more set up about being able to be flexible. And if one of those mornings starts out where you hear that big grunt, and those does start piling in, the more deer start piling in, that they know that place is safe. And so as these social, you know, systems happen, everybody starts showing up. That's a lot of doe, feet, trails, glands, smell in one little thicket that are all leading to this hub where all these deer are hanging out. There is no way that big deer is going to cut the track of one of those does when he stands up that evening or gets off of another doe, that he's not going to follow that to that area and want to check those scrapes. And that's exactly what happened. I didn't go back into this corner and get in my stand because the wind was just not consistent enough. And I tell you what, I just kind of sissied out, but I would rather be safe than sorry. And I stayed out, and sure as heck, here is the donger standing in the food plot at like 6:11 with like 20 minutes left to go of light, and he's standing there, and we've got a little collage of about 4 videos here of him standing so still that you can just, at one point you think that this video that we're playing is a picture, because he's standing so still, listening and smelling, and it's so quiet that there's no way I would have got away with it. Because my stand's only 30 yards from here, and that wind would have just settled, and just picture that smoke from that campfire. He would have picked up on something, and I would have muddied that water and he wouldn't be back. And he was right there. And so when you look on these videos, bang, 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 he's just standing there. He gets his picture taken and he turns around and walks off to be hunted another day, right? And then later on that next morning I wanted to get up, but I still had that east wind, right? And I was pretty defeated that the donger was there, and I go, that was probably my main opportunity. But the plan had worked. The problem was the wind wasn't right, and I stay on the really safe side of him knowing that I'm in the area and being hunted. So I stayed out the next morning. And then that next morning, you had a situation where it was an east wind, it was hot, and I saw very little deer movement on my trail cameras. I saw very little deer movement on my hunter friends that went out that morning because they had another situation that they could hunt with the east, and I was getting pretty defeated with these east winds. So I set up to go out that night and go, you know what? Forget it. This is fast forward to November 3rd. November 3rd, we go ahead and I'm going to my farm. Kirk's hunting his farm, and he's hunting a deer named Spider, and I'm hunting, still trying to get my eyes on one of my shooters, which is either the donger, diamond, or one of these other bucks that are on my property. And I am at this point so defeated with the east wind and it being hot that I just want to lay my eyes on a big deer. So I actually take the gift that God gave us with the rain, and I slip in on this ridge in this big open timber and let my wind blow off this big cliff that I've got on my property. And I move in along that cliff, and I go ahead and I get where my wind's blowing out of the southeast over this big ravine. I get in this big comfy ladder stand. I'm sitting up there for about 5 or 10 minutes, and maybe 20. And I look over to my right, and here steps out this 7.5-year-old deer named Boots. And he's instantly recognizable because of how wide he is and tall he is, but he doesn't have a lot of points and doesn't score real high. And all of a sudden he's standing there, and he's not there for 60 seconds, and he decides it's nap time. I really feel like this buck was bedded in the really thick things, really thick stuff. November 3rd, the year before, within 100 yards of there, I watched this buck bed there and watch does all morning. He's doing the same thing 365 days a year.
It's a creature of habit.
Yeah, and so I don't think a lot of people understand that if they have trail camera history with deer or intel from watching them, that a big mature whitetail, if he survives and is unpressured, will do almost the same thing a year to date within a couple hours. It's so common in killing a really big deer, an old deer, that they're doing the exact same thing 365 days apart. And so if you have trail cameras out there, or if you've seen a big deer in a certain area with a certain doe doing the same thing, and you can go back in your trail camera pictures or in your notes, you can go pinpoint that deer. And there's a high, very high, 80% plus high chance that he's going to do that exactly the same. And here's a scenario. He's 100 yards from where he was November 3rd, the year before, bedded down, walks out of this thicket, up on top, beds down, and is standing and is bedded down, staring at my direction on this oak flat. And I'm in this big, leaner ladder stand, just frozen now, and this big, giant framed buck. And every time he would turn his head to itch his back, I would film him on my phone. And this is video of him sitting there, itching himself, and just relaxing and watching this open timber for does, being very, very lazy. And then I'm contemplating and going through in my head, do I shoot this deer? Am I a hypocrite? Like, Chris, what have I said about, like, what have you, is your take that I talk about these
Well, you talk about
young
age
deer?
Age before beauty.
Age
right?
before beauty.
Yeah. Yep. Which is why I let you do all the talking. And then, I don't know. I mean, you talked about that. You talked about waiting until November.
Yeah, the part of that is pacing yourself. Like, November is what we all dream of. So
yeah,
if you're tagged out early in October, it's a gift it's a blessing and a curse because you don't get that sweet November, leaves have fallen and whatever. So now it's in November. I think my mindset changes and I go, okay, these mature deer here, I really like to go after age and beauty, big high scores with the age. Like
Yeah, I mean, if you can, yeah, of course.
if you can, right? And so that I kind of target that all of October. Once November gets there, you're like, okay, 1 month down out of 3, you're kind of, I want to see them doing rut stuff, and I want it up close and personal, and I want a really close bow shot. And in my head, I'm playing all of this stuff. I'm like, he is by far old enough. I have identified that there are all of these superstar bucks that I have been seeing the last week of October. You got superstar 3.5-year-old with the kickers and stickers that actually, after I shoot this big buck, is hitting this tree down below me and making a rub. I've got a double main beam deer. I've got all these this 4-year-old superstar that my neighbor actually just passed up. What a good neighbor! Like, passed him up. Giant 4-year-old. I think we've showed him on the show before.
Like he knew, so he passed him up?
Yeah, so we were talking on text and sharing pictures and this and that. And
what a neighbor.
And my guy, and he's awesome. He owns ground right next to us. So, and grew up with my wife, and he's like, well, man, this is a hard one, but he's getting a pass, and sends me this video of this giant 4-year-old 158 10-pointer, and is like, he's getting a free pass. And so he actually passes him, and I'm like, well, he's not getting shot on my farm, so hopefully, he makes it through. So he gets passed, and I'm sitting there watching this big buck, and this buck stands up, and the whole time I'm like, don't walk over here. I kind of don't want to fill a tag. It's only November 3rd. It's a really weird process, Chris. When you have this monster old, 7.5-year-old giant laying down at 50 yards in the brush right there, you can actually stand up and shoot him. And you're like, well, I have to watch him. And you watch him for 2 hours and he stands up. There's a little part of you that goes like, come give me the opportunity. I'm going to shoot you and I'm going to tag you. The other part's like, if you go the other direction, I'm not going to be mad because you get to play the chase again,
Yeah.
This deer stands up and I go ahead and film him. And he starts walking through the oaks, going into my opening. I'm filming him. My bow's in my left hand. And you see on this video, this deer decides, you know what? Instead of walking by Chris at 20 yards, I'm going to walk straight to him and make him make a decision. You see this deer turn and start walking to me, and I go, oh, crap. And I throw my phone in my pocket, and I had to grab my bow because within the next, 20 steps, he is walking directly at me and makes my decision for me. The closer he gets, the bigger he gets. The closer he gets, you can see the head, the maturity, the dream, everything. And he's walking. And I've got one walnut tree right in front of me. And I just go ahead and hook onto my release, and he is going to be at less than 6 yards in front of me. And I go ahead, and as soon as his head goes behind that walnut tree, I just go ahead and draw and anchor, and he comes out from behind this walnut, and he is at 5 yards and stares up at me. And at this point, he has cut my angle down. And I'm wanting to hopefully shoot him broadside and put that the new broadhead, the beast, through, the lungs. But he has just quartered at me at 5 yards. And it really, I think a lot of people would have freaked out. I literally live for that moment right here. I'm at full draw. The deer is at 5 yards. And I can shoot him back toward the liver. Or I can try what is kind of a taboo shot, which is in front of the shoulder, down into him, and take out the top of his heart. But it's only because in my brain, I'm picturing this little, water balloon that's in there, and I've got to pop it with this arrow. So I'm shooting 55 pounds, a Maxima red arrow, 350, and I have it tipped with a 2-inch beast broadhead, which is almost scary sharp. And I'm going to put all my equipment to the test. So I bury my green pin, my top pin, on my sight between the shoulder blade at the base of the neck, and I run that Maxima down through there, and I see it go in about 18 inches, and I'm like, that's got to be enough. This deer crashes off that cliff that's right there behind me, runs right by, almost takes out the ladder stand, leg of the ladder stand I'm on, off the top of it, dives, breaks the arrow in half. I see the arrow laying there. I watch him run down and down through these bottoms and go up the other side, about 80 yards. And he's standing up on top. I see him get wobbly, and I don't see him anymore. And I'm like, well, that escalated quickly.
Yeah, man.
And this deer ended up weighing over 238 pounds, with guts in, and he was actually like right at 200 with field dressed, and he was just a massive, beautiful, beautiful animal. Now, even though I saw the arrow go in, I knew that it had got down right above that heart area. I've never shot these broadheads before. I didn't know what they were going to do. I know they're super sharp, and I've never shot 55 pounds on a compound bow. I always shot 80 pounds. So I'd always shot way above, what the average was. And I knew that I could shoot through anything and all this stuff. So at 55 pounds, this sharp arrow, this 350 arrow, and the sharp broadhead, 2-inch cut beast went buried down in them. And there's a part of me that's like, did I mess up? I know where I hit. I know that I shot well, and I know that this is a very lethal shot, but you have a very small margin for error. And so I just went ahead and sat back, and I'm chilling in the stand, and I'm just talking to God, and I'm just kind of going, well, I did everything that I could do. And thank you, Lord, for the opportunity. This will work out. I'm a hypocrite if I don't shoot this giant mature animal that doesn't score maybe over 135 or 138, but definitely a Pope and Young deer. But I'm thinking to myself, I'm a hypocrite. I have all these double beam and split kicker and giant 4-year-olds and little baby superstars. If I don't shoot this big older animal that I've been preaching to everybody listening about, age over beauty, I would be a hypocrite. And so I just looked at it as, what a blessing. I don't need it to score 190. I just need it to be up close and personal and an experience that I love. And that's exactly what it was. And then just as I'm sitting there, here comes a little buck, here comes 2 does. They start chasing around in front of me at 10 and 15 yards. Incredible evening, sun's going down, and I look behind me, and here walks up, almost irony, here walks up the super duper star, 3.5-year-old with the splits and the double brows, the deer that could be the buck of a lifetime for me. If he would sit his butt down, I've had to pass him like 8 times in a week. And he is standing, I showed you the video. He's standing right below my tree stand and thrashing a tree and ripping up, almost saying, Chris, thank you. Here's this gift. You just took out the big bully.
So you're not going to take me.
You made room for me to grow and thrive on this property. Like it's almost this gift. I just had this gift to this big giant, shoot the sucker. And then here comes the deer that I'm literally making room for by managing my farm and making the right decision with this. He still may get hit by a car, or aliens may take him, or my neighbors may shoot him, because there's not a lot of people pass this deer up. But it's almost like this little sense of fun irony. God kind of gives you those God winks, and here's this deer that I'm praying makes it, comes in, gives me this show, rubbing this tree, and then walks around my stand and then walks in front of me, and I film him like he walked into his home. It was so crazy, dude. Here's this, you got a picture. Here's the 7-year-old monster deer, walks out of the sanctuary. I shoot him. He runs off. Here comes the deer that I'm hoping takes over the area and lives, because I've now made room for him that there's no bully in. And here he shows up, rubs everything, loves on everything, gives me a show, and walks up into the sanctuary that the big one came from, where if the big one was up there, he would have walked him off. And so like me finding fun things and bits like that is so cool to me, to like look at what that trade was and look at how cool that is. Now, to me, it was symbolism, but Was it something more than that? Whatever. I just think it was a really cool thing. And at that point, I just decided, let it get dark. I got down. I walked back to the tree. Walked back to the truck. From the tree, I got my really nice light. I carry really good rechargeable lights that I buy at Bass Pro that are like 5,600 lumen, and then a headlamp that's like 2,000 lumen. And I make sure for safety reasons that those are always charged in my truck. So I go ahead and get those lamps. I walk across the clover plot. I get to the ridge where I saw the buck stop. I find the first bit of blood. I've already recovered my arrow because it wasn't very far from the tree. And I find the blood, and I went live on Facebook if you guys want to be on the recovery with me. And I take up the trail, and there's this big sucker laying there. And I know immediately that I'm going to need help. So shout out to Logan Clays and his brother for helping me get those things out. Two young guys helping me drag this big boy out. I felt like all the years of me dragging deer out for people, I was repaid, and it was a super blessing. And there's this big sucker. I slapped a tag on him, took a moment, and just kind of sat there in that night sky and just kind of talked to God and was just like, what a great opportunity. And just soaked it all in. I wasn't in a hurry, and we got the buck out of there, and I went home and hung it, and it was incredible. Awesome. And like that was my first hack field.
Yeah. I mean, I think of like 2 episodes ago, right? You're talking about deer depression. I'm like, man, where are the deer? What's going on?
Instantly changes.
Yeah. Crazy. In just a few days.
Yep. And it wasn't like my plan happened. Like that's all we've talked about is setting up these X's and these plans and everything. And in the back of my head, I think that another chapter of strategy that we talk about is, it's very uncommon, but Roy says it's more common. He's a farmer, kind of studies the weather. We don't normally get east winds, and they're normally an unstable system. I don't like hunting them. But when that stable east wind system, whether it's because a storm up in Florida is coming from the southeast, you kind of have this obligation to go put a stand like I had on a ridge that was made for like a southeast wind. Like I hung this stand probably 6 years ago for my wife maybe even longer than that. I had this stand that had sat there for years, not very tall ladder stand for those days that I'm like, I'm going to need to go ahead and get in there deeper and stop hunting the edges, which is November. And I got in there and I went to a stand that I knew was safe. I checked it every year. And I got into this place a little deeper on a little weird kind of an area. And I called an audible. I had made all these plans, but I always have these stands that I could just kind of call an audible if I need to get in there, if that wind is consistent. And that's what happened here, was to go ahead and pull another card out of your or another tool out of your tool bag and go ahead and get in there and try to execute, make something happen. And that's exactly what happened here. But then we get home and celebrate. Kirk's in town and my wife's there, and my friends help me drag them out. And so I get there, I get the buck hung up, and we start coming up with a plan for the morning. It's like, this deer is showing up. He's probably going to show up on your property. Talking to Kirk, and sure as crap, this deer we've been after, called Spider, just been waiting for him to throw a card. He just reads the script, walks out on Kirk's property, and he shoots him with a beast 2.3 and blows through him, and that deer doesn't go 60 yards. And so we have 2 deer that are 6.5, 7.5, 8.5 years old that, Spider's one of them deer that has an incredible right side that with all these points and his big typical right side, and then this funky weird side that has 3 or 4, just spikes coming out. And he's just a really unique, fun deer. And he's an old animal. And between the 2, we go ahead and, right there on the farm, get pictures of them out in the white gold plots, and just kind of have our moment that comes together that we worked so hard for. You saw this deer, Spider, another older deer, just be in this really relaxed mood. So if you guys are listening to this and we've got this hot weather and you're out hunting these big deer, realize that, you need to be very sparing with your calling, like brr, brr, like little bits of calling, soft calling, yeah, little bit of rattling. They are not super worked up and super frenzied up to where you are going to fool them with a lot of intense calling. Less is more right now until maybe, getting closer to that 8th, 9th, 10th, somewhere around there. But, in the beginning here of November, you got to call just very sparingly, just brr, just to get a little attention. Brr. All you're doing is just reading these deer. Do not just be out there blind calling loud. You really need to pay attention to what you really feel that you can sell with calling. You see people play instruments all the time. You can't fake playing instruments, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can make it look like they know what they're doing, but no, you can't. I mean, not if you're doing it right. Like, you gotta put in the time, the effort.
You have to put in the time.
Yeah.
So if you're in your truck, drive your wife nuts, or at home or whatever, and just practice these different lifelike calls with your grunt tubes and brr, brr. These little bitty soft calls. Because both of these bucks were just literally very chill. Kirk's buck was definitely walking. He was walking on all kinds of different fields, scrapes, following behind does, was on cameras all night long, but never really worked up or frenzied. And then my buck, I didn't even have him on camera because he was avoiding the fields where I had the cameras. And I told you I hadn't been able to get into the woods and muddy the water because it hadn't really rained. And so I just kind of went in there because I knew I had left the farm alone all of October and I hadn't gone in deep into the woods. And I knew that November I could get in those woods and hunt deep and go in those for those first few days and get a real determinant of what the temperature of the deer attitude was. And they're very much chill. So if we look at what happened with my buck, was he was in a really thick, deep stuff, dark, thick, deep, nasty, where he probably had bed all summer. And he actually got up in the middle of the afternoon at 2:20, 2:30, walked out closer to that big open timber in those fields, and he bedded where he could see that all open timber. So this is like an old man that's going to come in and walk off the mountain, this big bull coming off the mountain and going to, ruin the party and take all the chicks and flip over the tables or whatever he's going to do, a big bar fight. And he's just sitting up there determining, is it worth it? And that's when, you're wanting to pay attention to those things and what that multiflora rose kind of, I always talk about soft edges and those deer-like edges. He was literally bedded in an edge, but it was like this little thicket, but he could still see out into like the open timber, like the big, where all the leaves have fell and looks like a park. He's watching into that park to see what's going on. And that's kind of my deer kind of report, that they're still not super fired up and wound up so tight that you can just be calling and acting a fool. But I do need to say this. You have to now get into those thickets and get into those woods. Most of the does are giving you kind of a free pass because they're being so harassed by little bucks right now. Like, think of this. All these does are not ready to be bred yet, not really until, the 8th or 13th or whatever, whenever that really is. They're getting ready to just be, the peak rut is just going to be wild here in a couple days. Probably we get a front that blows out of the west. But right now they're just getting harassed like burr, 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 by these little piranha bucks, I call them. These little piranha bucks kind of going all over the place, chasing these does and driving these does into these thickets and driving them to kind of be scared. And Chris, if I could explain it anything, this is how I would say, you being a new hunter and kind of just kind of getting all this information as I tell you it. Here's what I would like say. If if the does are harassed enough by the bucks, they're kind of not paying attention to the danger in the tree or the human presence in the woods. They're kind of giving us free passes.
They're kind of distracted.
They're very distracted because they're trying to save their heinies. I mean, these guys have got big points, and they're trying to get them to let them breed, and they're just like, oh, that big fat raccoon in that tree. He's got a bow, he's got what. They're kind of looking up going, I'll give you a free pass. And the buck is so concentrated on these does. This really is the time to invade your best spots. Really. By the time you're hearing this tomorrow, you're really wanting to get up in the morning, hunt all day, get in there, stay long, get in there early, and crash your best spots. But be smart about that best spot. If you've got that stand in that thicket in those woods, really be conscious of your footprints on like how to get in or how your wind's drifting. And then, just kind of really pay attention to how you're walking in, because the thing that can hurt you the most is those deer catching your footprints, catching your footprints with scent that you're holding. Because we got a lot of rain right now. We got inches last night in the last 2 days.
We finally
right?
are getting some rain.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of water molecules out there, and we've talked a lot about that. We're getting in the phase. About what's the date today?
Yeah, it's the 5th now. This is gonna air on the 6th.
Let's say the 6th. So right now, the 6th through the 8th through the 9th, the 10th. What you're gonna really have, and people think I'm funny when I talk about this, but I want you to picture that these bucks are blindfolded. Okay? Can you picture this?
Oh, I'm picturing.
Okay.
Do I need to close my eyes for this?
You can. Picture the bucks being blindfolded.
Okay.
And they're walking through the woods tasting the air. Because there's so much moisture, there's so many water molecules holding scent out there that when these bucks would go upwind to me the other day, I could smell them. Yeah. I could smell them. They've been peeing on their glands, and they just smell like rutted up, nasty urine buck smell. And I'm actually smelling them from 20 yards upwind of me. I want you to picture that they're walking around on trails and woods that they, that's why they have all the eyelashes and all the whiskers and all the stuff. They know how to walk through that woods. That's where they live, right? Their living room. Imagine walking around your house and your wife. What's your favorite dessert? What is your favorite thing to eat? Baby back ribs. Banana bread, warm banana bread.
That's always delicious.
Okay. So let's picture warm banana bread.
Okay.
Let's say your wife said, "Hey, Chris, let's have a game." And she put on a blindfold, and it could get wild because you are married.
I didn't know where this is going, but okay, continue.
Okay, but you are married.
Yes,
anyway,
I am married.
So blindfold. If you're listening, girl, get your blindfold and your banana bread ready. No, just kidding. So you could blindfold, and she's got warm banana bread coming out of the oven, and she was to hide that in the house, right? You would be able to use kind of the thermocline from the air or the heat kicking on, and you're going to have to navigate around your living room, right, from room to room. The boys would probably keep hiding it. You'll never actually get it. But you're going to be able to smell your way around that house. You're home, right? You have a blindfold on. You could feel your way around that home and use your sniffer to find that banana bread.
Yeah. Okay?
And that gives a good visual, and people are like, "Oh, this guy's crazy." I don't really care if you think I'm crazy. It's a very good visual to think about what the white-tailed deer bucks are doing in the woods. They've been in these thickets a million times. They've been across these fields a million times. They've been on all these trails. They know them like the back of their hand. That's what they've been doing for the last month, is walking all these trails, rubbing on these trees, marking all their scent. They've left all these scent things. And now really what they're doing is they are on a molecular level, walking through the woods, tasting the air. They're trying to find these does that are the closest to standing estrus, which means the actual breeding process. They're trying to taste the air as all these different does are trading trading areas and running around. They are trying to decipher how old that scent is on that trail, how new this scent is on this trail, which direction that doe went, and then searching out through the woods using that wind to their advantage, right? And so we have to remember that if we're hunting, we want to be on that downwind of that downwind while these guys are searching, because they're really just kind of tasting the air, and they're going to cover sometimes 3 to 10 miles in a day when they are not locked down with a doe. And our goal right now, up until the 8th, 9th, 10th, before they kind of lock down, is to catch these bucks on these all-day walkabouts, not too much different than the vampire walk, but for a different reason. They're trying to determine who wants to fight them, who's in their territory, which chicks are which does are down for, making baby deer, and then where are they bedding, and taking inventory. It's a very complicated, system for them, but they live for this time of year when they have to procreate. And these deer are literally walking around tasting the air, because there's so many water molecules in the air, and it gets down to a molecular level. And so I want you to think like that and go, okay, well, that makes sense. It's really humid out because of the rain. And if the wind's blowing out of the west or the south, and I was a buck, how would I zigzag through my farm to find, the warm, the baby back ribs, the smoker going off, or, in this case, the doe, or in our case, when we would be looking for the warm banana bread that just came out of the oven. You can almost kind of smell that, taste the air. And so that's what I want people to think about as they go into this, pre-lock kind of time here in this early middle of the first week of November phase. That's what I'm going to be concentrated on as I go after donger and some of these other deer. I'm not going to, slack off from hunting. I'm just taking my time right now, enjoying this last kill, and then getting on to one of the other big deer and going out and experiencing the world, wake up, and maybe I'll get lucky. I talk to my wife all the time about maybe a 200 incher is going to show up that I never know about, and I have to be out there. I can't rely on the camera. So be the trail camera, picture the molecules in the air holding a lot of scent. Be conscious of your scent, walk downwind of where you're going in to hunt using the wind, and picture how these deer are going to walk through your property using the topography, smelling and tasting this air to see where their buddies are, see where their enemies are, and see where the girls they're in love with are. Does that make sense?
I think that all makes sense. Now everyone's hungry too, thinking about banana bread and baby back ribs and smokers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we need it. So, you were able to shoot your first buck, put a tag on it. I think that deserves a little round of applause. So there we go. Yes. Let's all celebrate with Chris Brackett. While we're doing that, while you're grabbing your banana bread, if you've been listening, I want to remind you to check out the Brackett Show or BrackettShow.com if you want to watch any of the videos or listen to the show. Also, you
two T's.
Yes, that's important.
We just got to remember
Brackett Show, Brackett spelled with 2 T's. And then also, you can call the landline. We call it the landline because it is 309-761-LAND. That's 309-761-5263. What do you think? Should we get into some questions here?
Yeah, I just want to tell everybody about White Gold real quick. They're a sponsor of the show, and they're great partners. I've been using them for quite a while. This is White Gold, whitegolddeerfeed.com. This here is one of my favorites that I'm holding is the Clover Rush. It's a go-to. Very good frost seed that's a perennial, the blend of perennials that are just have great seed. And there's lots of tips and tactics on our Facebook and Instagram page to where you can figure out how to do either, a poor man food plot or go as advanced as we go. And White Gold has just been there for us. They have incredible fresh seed delivered to your door. They're out of Michigan. And shout out to White Gold. Go check them out if you're going to be buying seed. So hit me with a question.
All right. Well, I know people have been paying attention when you've been going live and posting stuff. So here's a question related to someone who saw that you shot a deer.
Uncle Bubby, it's Ray. Hey, congratulations on another hammer. But you know what? I was thinking about this, and I think it'd be great for the show. I'm thrilled that you didn't have to kill a 200-inch animal, a 180, 190-inch animal. You killed a mature animal. You went for a birthday instead of a score. I love it. I love the fact that you're thinning your herd, and I think it's something, if you have an opportunity on your show, I'd love for you to talk about this type of scenario where guys, and this happens to me here on the East Coast as well as to the guys I manage in the Midwest, guys don't want to shoot their bucks. They only want to hunt the big boys. They only want to hunt the top scorers. And I want you to talk about, if you can, talk about the detriment to the herd and what happens in that scenario if you don't kill your mature animals. Appreciate it. Congratulations again, bud.
Big Ray. We talk about him often. Ray's one of my best buddies on the planet. That's it is Owego.
Yeah, we talked about that. I saw that someone clarified too. That and Wausau.
Yeah.
For the
that's in
Lowdown.
the PA. Yeah, Wausau.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
But no, you're good. So Ray is talking about congratulating me on this older deer. We've talked about it a little bit. And we've talked about this, but I don't think you can talk about it enough about the age class of animal. I just put the video out of that big buck, and we've showed it on this show right now, to where that really nice 9-pointer walks underneath me, and people are losing their minds. Well, it must be nice. And you're like, well, yeah, this deer can do his thing on my farm, and he doesn't fall into the age class that I want to take off my farm. If my nephews were bow hunting, that deer would be open to them to shoot. If my wife wanted to bow hunt and hunt that deer, great. But when you have a scenario that you either get a consult from me or Ray's got people that he runs and manages their farm, when these people are asking for advice to get a big number of white-tailed deer at an age class of maturity, which in my book is 5.5 years or older, that means that deer is mature. Some places in the world is 4.5. For me, it's very much a wrestle. Like, I had something to prove coming off my timeout where I wanted to kill very high-scoring deer, because I personally set that goal, and I had decided that year I just wanted to go after the biggest scoring deer that I could find. I shot 2 180s that year, and I couldn't pull a bow, so I shot them with a crossbow, but I shot them at ranges that for me easily would have been able to shoot with a bow. So those experiences were unique, and they got my heart pounding, and they were incredible, and they were high scoring deer. Last year on my farms that I was hunting, I ended up shooting 2 really great deer, a 160 high 160s and a 170 animal, and they were incredible. But they also were high-scoring deer. I went into this year saying to myself, I cannot keep high-grading these animals. Do you know what that means when I say high-grading? Like taking the cherry off the top? I mean, kind of thing. Like you're taking this top echelon of animal with genetics out of the gene pool on a farm that you may not be letting other people hunt, right? So you have this whole group of deer growing up, and if you only took off the superstars, you're going to be left with a problem.
Yeah, well, and especially because you're not on public, right? Like, so you have the time to wait for those deer to mature and make sure that they're good.
Yep. What's my goal? I chose that in my life. I chose that in my career. I chose that in people's farms. That's what I do. My goal is to get deer to 5.5 years or older, and then feel comfortable on a farm enough that you can have the encounter and you can kill them. If we can kill the ones or take the ones that have the high scoring and still are 5 or 6 years old, that's the problem is that's what we're all striving for, is this high score and the age. The problem is who is in the game that I'm going to get into that hunts at the level I hunt to take off these other bucks, right? I've talked about it a little before that there's one scenario for it. If some of these people have these, big farms, 1,000 acres, 2,000 acres, they're fortunate enough to have the dream of thousands of acres to hunt. They can actually go into the DNR. This is an idea. They can actually go into the DNR and get a deprivation tags so they can take and control their herd on their farm. That would be one way that a landowner could personally shoot some of these genetically inferior deer because they would count on their deprivation tags, but you can't go pick up the racks. So it's merely just to thin the herd. That's the catch-22 with the deprivation permits that they have in some states and have in Illinois. You could go in, if you personally didn't trust or didn't have a bunch of friends that you didn't know what they would shoot, you could get these deprivation tags from the DNR. Go in and shoot these deer, and then you have to let them lay, which that brings up another conversation. Or you, in Illinois, where we have 2 tags, you have to kind of have that conversation with yourself. And I was fortunate enough to be able to watch this buck long enough bedded for 2 hours that I walked through every scenario on the planet to get myself to a place where I went, age over beauty. I have to do this for my farm. And then why am I being a hypocrite where I want to try to shoot a 180 deer again? I love to kill a Boone and Crockett whitetail, but this thing is a Boone and Crockett in age, and here he comes right to me, makes the choice for me, and the experience was such a high experience that it trumped anything else that was happening with the age or even the score of the animal, because it was such a cool experience to have him in that close and make that shot. What do you take from that as somebody just learning about whitetails and genetics? And, do you have anything that you can add from like the outside looking in? Yeah.
I mean, the idea of just in general, when you're talking about hunting and scoring and things like that, like that's all new to me. And understanding kind of the popular, or trying to better understand the idea of like a population of, does and bucks in different ages. And you've got certain bucks that are going to be like more ideal as they age and others that are not. I think I don't know if I necessarily at this point have a lot to add other than the fact that like I get the idea of making sure that you're hunting in like a strategic way and not just like shooting whatever walks in front of you. And especially if you've devoted yourself to it, it's like it's more than just to go out. I mean, if you've only got 2 tags, right? Like why
2 tags, and this year I have 90, 100, 119 days to hunt.
Sure. Well, I know one of the questions that I asked in one of the first episodes, I think maybe even the first or second episode, was like, would you rather tag a deer on like the first day, or would you rather have the entire season to be hunting the same? And you kind of are having a little bit of both, right? Like you just shot a deer, but you've got another one that you've been tracking for probably years now, but like you've got, donger that you've been wondering if you're going to have an opportunity to shoot, and you're taking your time. And who knows? I mean,
and I still could get them.
Yeah, there's still a chance. So I mean, I think the thing that I would take away, and if I were to add anything, is like, I think maybe you've said this too, is like make a plan and follow the plan. And
even if it's for that year. Even if it's short term, right? I think the greatest part about what we're talking about on this show is you can change. You can change from year to year. You can change from month to month. Being open and at peace or real with yourself is what kind of this man show kind of format is anyways. I think the truth speaks volumes. When you say like, I've got my farm, and I say like, I've kind of running into a problem here. Yes, I could have one of my friends, shoot one of these other coal bucks, but what we would consider coal bucks is like a deer I shot, or am I in it for the experience? And I think it's okay to change your mind when you start out in October and you work on it in October to like outsmart the highest scoring and the biggest. And then let's say, it took me having these great encounters with deer, nice deer up close and personal that I let them walk, to get me to a place that I was finally ready to change my mindset and take this opportunity.
Yeah.
And then have this great experience. But it took all these encounters, and if I wouldn't have made myself go, and I would have, that goes back to that trail camera comment. If I didn't go to the woods as many times as I did and have all these encounters, I passed up 30 to 40 different bucks on 3 or 4 different farms this year. 30 to 40 bucks. Some of them big, some of them nice, some of them young, but 30 to 40 are having those experiences at the beginning of the year when you don't have 0 encounters. You're waiting for the biggest and the giantest and the oldest, right? And then as you start passing these deer and you kind of fulfill your cup with like, oh, I got it. These deer don't even know I'm here. I'm kind of getting my fix. I'm having my wildlife whitetail experience, and I'm walking through this, and I get to a place by November that you're like, all right, bring out a big mature sucker. I'm ready to dull an arrow. Does that make sense?
It does. And, I was thinking about just in the time that I've known you and some of your story and some of what we've been able to share in these episodes. I think of like episode 3, and I even see people commenting like, oh, he's the same as he ever was or whatever. But like you've evolved and grown, and I see that in this discussion, right? Like in you letting various deer go, in you choosing to shoot the deer that you did. Maybe it's not going to score the highest, but it was the right thing to do, right? And so I think just seeing how you've matured as a hunter, and I think that's important for people to see and hear about as well, whether they're young or old, whether they're new to hunting or they've been hunting for decades. I think understanding that you can grow and you can learn. And I mean, I think that even your faith informs some of those decisions.
They do. For sure does.
Not just like doing whatever comes to mind or whatever, that primal urge you might have. It's like you're thinking it through a lot more than just that.
Well, I think of a couple euphemisms or examples or wherever this pertains. I had a guy reach out last night, and he's like, I'm a vet. I deal with, post-traumatic stress. I know you've done stuff with vets before. I know you do it like quietly. You're not out bragging about, hey, this is what I do. I help people. And so he reaches out and he says, hey, you never know if you don't shoot your shot, which is, I believe that. If I didn't shoot that buck, I'd have never killed it, right? So I believe in that. So we have a little conversation over messages, and he's like, hey, man, is there any way that you can help me get on a buck or have this experience, or do you allow anybody to hunt with you? And I literally went, man, I will cook a steak for you. We will catch as many fish as you want. I could make some Moscow mules, and we could sit on my deck. We could have a Corona. We could feed my fish. We can go maybe turkey hunting. We could go mushroom hunting, shed hunting, but whitetail deer hunting, that's for me. Like, I have my own problems. That is my thing that I do, and it's one of the reasons is because how I look at it and these decisions that I'm making with my deer and my herd and my land or whatever. No one will ever take care of yourself like you should take care of yourself. So my property is kind of my thing, which is like I'll share it with people in the off season, but when it comes to that time, that is my life's work and my art, and I love my animals. I love to watch them do their thing. I like to selectively take off my farm what I do. And so I'm okay with telling him, no, not hunting, but maybe other stuff, right? And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
And then I think because I think people are in different phases. I have neighbors now. They're great people. And, they have hunted. They've discovered that living next to me has a lot of fun benefits when it comes to whitetails walking around everywhere. And, so they hunt next door, but if they shoot a deer, they run on our property, like no matter what. If you shoot one, it runs on our property. So that's been 2 of them got shot this week, ran on our property. Didn't find the one the other day. This morning I had to go to work here to do this. It rained all night. I don't know if they found it or if they came over and looked for it or whatever, but it's like, do you say, hey, okay, your son hasn't killed a deer, maybe hasn't killed very many, and I'm in this weird place because I'm sure they're listening, but I'm in this weird place because like I could take them and the youngster that's just a awesome hunter. Like you can definitely tell he has the woodsmanship. He wants to be in the woods, and funny, man, he's got these big boots, probably wearing his dad's boots or whatever, and he's fumbling around. His mom just loves it, and I watch him on Facebook, and I watch him, and they're trying to document and work through it and love it and whatever, and he wounded one that was low the other day, and then shot one last night, pinwheeled it right in the back of the, in the stomach guts, and I told him you have to wait till morning because this deer you have to let it do an errant shot. You have to let the broadhead do its job. You just have to. You can't push that deer. You'll never find it, especially in the rain. So just let it go and die, and we'll get it in the morning. So that's probably what I have to do after that, see if I can find this deer. But I say that to say this. If I took the mom and the dad and let's say the whole family and I stuck them in a blind and I put 35 animals around them into the World Series of the World Series of the World Series, and deer just ran all over them, and then, shot a deer and watched 30 other ones. Is that better? As a dad, what do you think? Is that better than just kind of having them feel the growing pains of it? Because they have a lot of fun. They don't hunt like me. When I hunt, I am so serious about it. So serious that I am so precise. I mean, when you see me walking and going in and precise and whatever, I am not, even if I take somebody, it's not fun. This is a blood sport. I'm going to take something's life, right? I'm trying not really to have fun in it. It's not fun for me. I'm going in to stop a heart. Make a precise shot, kill this thing. And my neighbors are kind of in, and I just use them as an example because right now they're heavy on my heart, is like, what can I do to help make the experience? If I go take the kid, they're not like my nephews. My wife, my nephews, my guests that went hunting, like, me. If I took you hunting, you would be like, he's intense. I know what this is going to be like. I'm still going to make it fun, but it's going to be more of a rewarding fun because of all the Jenga blocks we stacked of perfection kind of to get there. And then like, as long as we don't make any noise, it's going to be an epic night. It's not going to be like we might see a deer. It's going to be an epic night. Sure. I don't think I want to put that pressure on children. I don't think I want to put that pressure on neighbors. I don't think I want to put that pressure on people. And so just thinking about that way of life, take Josh Bomar, for example, take some of these other guys. So when Josh Bomar talks about scent control and what he does, Bud, him and I have a lot of other people like this. They are psychopaths about their scent. Okay. I set my farm up without equipment that I can slip in and slip out like a ghost, but I can smell like, my wife was cooking pot roast or something the other day and had onions and stew and all the smells of my house, and my clothes smelled like it. I can go out and get away with that the way I set up my stuff. I don't have to use the scent control that a lot of guys do because I'm not going to put myself in that position to fail. And then you get guys like Josh and other people that are so scent crazy. They wash their clothes. They're using sodium benzoyl. They're using unstable oxygen O3 molecules to kill the bacteria and the scent and the smell. I don't do any of that because I've got to a point the way I hunt that they're not going to beat me. And it may keep me out of some scenarios. But I think that this talk comes back to that of those are all just preferences and or what we get out of hunting and what we choose, right? Which comes down to age over beauty or big bucks or little bucks or age bucks or whatever. But I really think that guys need to hear the last thing Ray said is, I think the big boys that have a bunch of ground like I do, if they're not at the phase that they're hunting the oldest deer on their farm, even if it's the crappiest scoring deer on their farm, I think it's either a matter of time or a social understanding circle with your friends that says, okay, I'm going to go after the oldest deer on the farm, and I'm going to go after the highest scoring deer on the farm. 1 and 1. If I got 2 tags in Illinois, I'm not going to try to shoot another old mediocre scoring deer. I'm going to try to shoot one of the high grade deer, and then another, and then the first one was of age. I think if somebody has 2 permits, I think they need to get in the system of oldest deer on the farm and then highest scoring deer on the farm, and that way you're kind of managing you're really managing your farm and tit for tat. You're taking one out that can detriment the herd, and you're taking one out that has benefited from the management on the farm and all the food. And I really think that should be more common practice out there, that we should stay away from shooting 2-year-old and 3-year-old 10-pointers and be shooting, 4 and 5-year-old 8-pointers, because they're just never going to score. And we just got to stay away from high grading. I know that Jared and Jeremy on Hunter podcast, which will be dropping yesterday, which is today.
A new episode that you were on.
Yeah, a new episode. We did a 3-hour, just a deer discuss. 3 friends working on their, I work on their Illinois property with them. They're pretty close to my stuff. And we just had a great rut deer talk with no objective and no other thing but to tell people about the new Brackett Show, and to just visit with my friends that I've gotten really close to in a year, with like-mindedness about things of these discussions. So look up the Hunter podcast, which HUNTR, and hopefully we get some of their fans and they get some of our fans, and they're just some really great dudes. They're headed out to Iowa, and they'll be back here visiting. Maybe we'll get them in studio here.
Yeah, that'd be great. This episode, we've had an opportunity for you to share kind of your hunting stories, like our campfire chat, if you will.
Yeah.
Base camp chat. And in the next episode, we'll get into lots of questions. But I think maybe you should give us the lowdown.
Yeah, so the Lowdown, guys, is brought to you by my high-speed trail camera viewer. This baby goes with me everywhere. It stays in my truck. I think it's in my truck right now. I got so much going on with the 2 big deer we killed that I've kind of in disarray. Kind of got to take a day, maybe while it's raining today, and kind of get back in it. I like to have everything organized, or at least my organization. But I don't go really many times to my field or to my farm without the Lowdown high-speed trail camera viewer. It is this big 9-inch viewer screen, kind of like a tablet, right? And it takes different cards, and it has an SD card reader for a card that's from your trail camera. And then it's got another one that is like your save card, where you can pick and choose your favorite pictures and videos and save them to this card. It's really cool. It's HD. I don't know, dude. I can't say enough good things about this bad boy. I like to hook it up to my HDMI cable.
HDMI, yeah, to get into your TV.
And then I hook that up to a mini. It's like a mini or a micro, and it goes into a full HD. And I actually, when I'm sitting around with my wife and I'm going through, I can actually look through them on my touch screen Lowdown viewer, and everybody in the room can see it. So kind of cool for deer camps. Be a great gift for your buddies if you're going to deer camp. And you can get on, it's at Hunter's Mate, but what is the Lowdown? Lowdownviewer.com.
Yeah,
go ahead and check
as a reminder, you can go to Brackett Show with 2 T's, BrackettShow.com.
Oh, yeah.
And we have all our sponsors there. So, like, if you're like, oh, man, I don't remember where he said to go, just go to Brackett Show, and anything that we talk about, we'll make sure to put it on the website.
If I was to say Lowdown for the next couple days, we've already talked about it. These east winds should be done, guys. It's going to be hot, but these east winds should be done. I guess I should say get a suntan and enjoy this hot weather, but the one thing, the correlation between all of this is, or the thing that we have to remember, I don't think the correlation is the right word, but we have to remember that it doesn't matter how hot it is. The doe estrus and the rut and the bucks doing buck stuff still happens. Whether it's 80 degrees or minus 10, it still happens. It makes it a little more enjoyable being out there at 65 degrees, not mentally, because you picture the cold and the frosty and the crisp leaves, but we're just not going to get that this year. So you have to be out there. This should make it easier to do long, boring sits waiting for the bucks to come cruising through. That just means you should be able to sit longer. Do not, I repeat, do not get discouraged that it's hot out. The deer are still going to be doing deer breeding rut things, period. They may do them earlier in the morning. They may do them later in the afternoon. But if that happens, you're going to see this midday transfer movement that's going to be big bucks going from big buck area to big buck area looking for does. Get in those thickets. Those does are just not going to be on a feeding pattern. I want you guys to think about this. If the deer are fat, both of the bucks we just skinned out last night are covered in fat into November. If they are covered in fat, why would a big buck that's covered in fat and ripped up and has all of this excess energy, why would he have to eat anything? Don't worry so much about the food plots. Don't worry so much about the cornfields. Don't worry so much about the soybean fields. They're not keying in on the food sources. So all your cameras on your edges and your scrapes and all your stuff, they're going to be dead. These deer are going to be in the timber. So go ahead and invade, be the trail camera, and get into these thickets and sit long sits, and you are going to have great results. They don't have to eat. I have had so many questions, Chris, this week on Facebook and Instagram of people going, hey, I've got all this food plots. I've got all this stuff. And they're like, what am I going to see? And I'm like, I don't know who told you this, but the deer don't have to eat. When we're so full with food and fattened up and we've got stuff to do, we don't need to eat. And that's what they got stuff to do. They don't have time to go eat. They don't have time to waste. They don't have energy to waste. It doesn't matter. Don't look for them coming out into the food to actually do food stuff. They may come out into the open to get away from the other deer and do stuff at night, but it's just going to make it a lot harder to get back to their bedroom or back in the woods before, kind of like an October morning. It's going to make it harder for you to beat them into the woods because they're not out eating a mile away and nice and cool, and it's nice and crisp, and it takes them longer to get back home. You're just not going to have that. You're going to have shorter movements. They're going to have shorter movements in the timber. They're not going to travel long ways to, do the crisp, cool mornings. They're just big fat deer with furry coats that hate 70 degrees as much as I do, not doing a lot of deer stuff. So get in tight, get in thick, and sit very long. That's all I got to say. And remember, don't get down and look at your arrow. Creep out of there and give these deer 3 hours. Give them 6 hours. Give them overnight. At 60 degrees, 57 degrees, it's like 50s at night. 50s at night will save the meat. You'll be good to find that deer in the morning.
It's been cooling off.
Yeah, it cools off in the evening, especially with it being, close to the ground and stuff. That meat's going to cool off. So you're going to be able to find your meat. Don't push a deer that has an errant shot just because you're like, I got to get the meat. Now, if you don't find it, you're not going to get the meat anyways. If you're hitting one lung, if you're hitting this, it's going to be really, really a tough go if you don't start paying attention to your rules. I have heard of dozens of people that I know that have wounded deer this year. Some of them, the arrows didn't go in far enough because they shot them in the shoulder or whatever. But a lot of them are just carelessness of gut shot or deer shot that would die if they gave them more time. So just gosh, if you shoot a deer, just give it plenty of time for that broadhead to do its job. I want to talk about on next episode the beast broadhead and what real damage and stuff it's done. So I hope you got some great questions for episode 12 coming in. Is episode 12, right?
Yeah.
This would be 11?
This is 12.
This is 12.
Yeah, this is 12. So next one is 13. Look
Okay,
at that,
so
man.
on 13, Lucky 13, I want to talk about broadheads, the beast broadheads, what they did, and the Brackett report on that, and then you've got some smoker questions. So this has been episode 12 of the Brackett Show. I really appreciate you guys. It was more of a campfire talk than a question session, but I know a lot of you have been asking about the stories and what's going on, and these are up-to-date stories. So I hope people took a lot from that.
I'm happy for you, Chris. You know, you've been waiting.
Me too.
And there's more to come.
Me too, but I can't get over this hot. Give me some cold weather. Give me some cold weather, Lord.
I think it's coming.
It's coming. I think it's going to be a cold year. So one of the things is I don't want to tag out yet because I have all of that food, all the food plots to hunt over.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That's the double-edged sword.
Hey, it's
That's
a good
the
problem to
double-edged
have, though,
sword.
right?
It's a great problem. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Make sure you hit subscribe, like. Make sure you're following us on all things and share it with your friends and tell your friends, and we'll just keep you updated. All right. Thank y'all.